Okay, today we are continuing on the four-step transportation planning process, and as just to revise, to catch up with previous lecture, we have four steps. We have the initial step, which is step zero. Step zero is basically preparing or collecting the data and modeling the network. Then today we are gonna start on step one, which is basically the trip generation component here. Okay. Uh, Before we start, okay, we need to collect. We need to define the step, which is the step where the number of trips produced and or attracted is calculated for each transportation analysis zone. Okay, so the data input are basically the zone area, okay, the land use classification, the population, the number of households, employment, and so on. The outcome from this step will be the produced trips and the attracted trips, okay, the production and the attraction. Before we go further, we need just to understand few issues. We have now daily activities. So for trip generation, there is a method which is based on daily activities. For, for example, you keep a diary and you record that you are going from home to work in the morning, then from work to shopping, and from shopping to eating out, from eating out going back home, and so on. So that's kind of a daily activity, and based on the daily activities, we can extract or we can estimate the trips between origins and destinations. Okay, that's a method. The other method, okay, which is based on the land use characteristic. But before we go to that, we need to have some important definitions. The peak hour, okay, what do we mean with the peak hour? The definition for the peak hour, okay, is the 1 hour of the day that has the highest traffic volume counts, okay, for a roadway segment or an intersection, okay? So that's for the peak hour definition. Primary trips, what do we mean with primary trips? Trips that go directly between or from the primary purpose of home, work, and school. So primary purpose for trips, okay, are home, work, and school. Okay, those are basically our daily trip patterns. Okay, sometimes we go shopping during the week, but we don't go shopping every week, every day of the week. Okay, but you go to home, you go to work from home every day of the week. You go to school or to the college, okay, every day of the week. That's assuming that we don't have COVID-19. Okay. Uh, there is another trips which is called secondary trips or linked trips. Okay, the remaining trips, that's a good definition. The remaining trips which have one or more stops along the way, okay, to the primary destination. That means while you are, returning back from work, you stop by for a shopping center to go to grab something, on the way home. Those are secondary or linked trips. Can be classified also into bypass trips, okay? A trip that is deviated from the roadway, okay, to a site for a stopover to sites such as retail, as I mentioned before. There is another issue, okay, we need to understand, which is the trip generation rates. What is the trip generation rates? Basically, the number of vehicular movements for a land use category within 24-hour period. This is expressed as the number of trip ends per unit of physical land use parameter. This is very important because that's the most, or that's the commonly used method in estimating trips. Okay, what are the factors affecting personal trip generation? Okay, income, okay, a vehicle ownership, households, family size. Of course, the higher the income, the more trips are generated. The higher the number of vehicle ownerships, the more trips. Household structure and family size. The family size, the more family size, okay, the more for larger families, of course, there's going to be more trips. Additional factors are value of land. Okay, if the land is expensive, okay, or in downtown or something, it affects also the trips. Residential density and accessibility, okay, that also affects the number of trips. For freight trip generation, okay, that's the previous part that was for personal trips, okay, رحلات الافراد. But here that's for freight trip generation, الشحن التجاري يعني. تمام. In trip generation modeling, in addition to personal trips, freight trips are also of interest. Freight trips are influenced by freight trips بتتأثر بإيه يا شباب؟ Number of employees, okay. يعني if we are talking about industrial complex, مدينة صناعية, okay, number of employees determines the number يعني عدد العمال اللي شغالين في المصنع هو هيحدد كمية الشاحنات اللي هتيجي والمادة الخام اللي هتوصلني. واضح؟ number of sales, okay, area of commercial firms. If we are talking about a shopping center or something, the larger the shopping center, the more freight trips it will generate. Okay, trip purpose. We have three trip purposes: are home based to work, okay, home based to others, non-home based. Okay, as we mentioned before, those are, you know, those belongs to the primary trips. Okay, home to work. Okay, there's work to home. Okay, work to others, others to work, home to others, others to home. Okay, determining the trip generation rate for residential area. For residential area, we can use this formula. Okay, I think this is, I think this was from hold a second. Okay. This is from the ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, okay? And this formula takes into consideration the persons per household, number of people per household, and number of autos, okay, per household. يعني بتاخد عدد أفراد البيت فيه كام فرد، اوكي، وبتاخد عدد السيارات اللي في البيت في المعادلة اللي هنا قدامكم. تمام. دي طريقة. The disadvantage of this model, because it first of all, this is based, or this equation based on US data. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, it needs more detailed information, such as you need to have an idea about the number of persons per household, or at least the average number of persons per household. Okay. You need to have population data. And here also you need to have number of autos per household. Okay. So this kind of information, sometimes it's difficult to obtain. Okay. So we solved an example last week on how to estimate the trip generated from this transportation analysis zone, and it was it was counted as 10.22 trips per household per day. Okay, so that means you need to multiply this number by this number of households, you get the total production per, of this transportation analysis zone. Determining the number of households in a zone. How to determine the number of households in a zone? That's also an equation or a form, which is basically the zone area, the construction percentage, and we solved an example on this last week. There is another alternative, okay, which is based on the land use. Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. This is for trip attraction. The trip attraction is estimated by two methods. Method one, employment based. Okay, and that's an example for that. Okay, for the home base to work. Okay, the attraction per household. Of course, there is no attraction, but attraction to non-retail employee 1.7, attraction for downtown retail employee, and so on. The other method, which is based on land use trip generation rates. That's a small example of it. This is from the ITE trip generation manual, 8th edition. And to explain it to you better, let me just share this with you, share this screen. This is a file from, that's the 10th edition, okay, from the trip generation manual. You see here, that's the trip generation manual, okay, and that's the ITE trip generation manual 10th edition, okay, and that's the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Common trip generation rates, PM peak hour. Okay, so they are very specific. Let me just grab this together. Okay. Okay, so here, for example, they give a code for each land use. So for the ports and terminal, okay, intermodal truck terminal, okay, park and ride lot with bus service. You know what's park and ride, Shabab?
Yes, doctor.
Can someone tell me what's park and ride?
Can I say it in Arabic?
Yes, go ahead. Hello.
تركب باص تروح إلى المكان الرئيسي.
لا, can you repeat that because I didn't get it? Your voice was, was disconnected. Can you repeat that, please?
إنه توقف إنه توقف سيارتك بباركينج يعني وتركب باص تروح للمكان المقصود، يعني يكون الباركينج بعيد عن المكان المقصود.
Exactly. For example, for those that work in the Jebel area, okay, but they live in, for example, here in Dammam or in Khobar, okay, they drive their cars and they park it somewhere, at this bridge that's north of Dammam, okay? And they take buses and they go to Jebel. And the same also for some employees from Aramco, okay? They do the same. So it's basically, so here it's a, for parking spaces, the trips per unit, 0.43. That's what they have observed. That means if you have 1,000 parking spaces, you can expect 430 trips generated from that parking lot. واضحة يا شباب؟ Okay. for industrial zones. General light industrial, okay, for each 1,000 square foot, okay, that's gross foot area, GFA. It's 0.63 trips, okay, for industrial park, okay, that's the rate. For manufacturing, warehousing, okay, warehousing دي مخازن, okay, mini warehouse, okay, and so on. High cap cold storage warehouse, okay, دي ثلاجات حفظ, okay, I'm sorry, high cube fulfillment center, that's similar to some, Amazon warehouses. So there is, more 1.37. But for a cold storage warehouse, you see it's 0.12. تمام؟ دي ثلاجات حفظ خضروات وحفظ منتجات غذائية مثلا. For data center, that's 0.09. For utilities, and so on. Residential, for example, for residential, single family detached housing, dwelling unit. The unit here, focus with me, please. You can see that the units, it varies by the land use type. For here, for example, dwelling unit, that means one residential unit, okay? It might be an apartment or a separated home, okay? And here in this case, it's detached housing, single family detaching housing. So that's separate homes. It's 0.99, okay? For multi-family housing, low rise, يعني هنا بنايات بس مش عدد يعني the number of floors is not high, okay? It's 0.59, 0.56. High rise, it varies, 0.36 to 0.19, okay? That's based on the settings location, general urban, okay, or dense multi-use urban, okay? يعني مثلا لو احنا بنتكلم على نيويورك مثلا داون تاون مانهاتن، اوكي، هيبقى حاجه زي كده مثلا دنس مالتي يوز urban. لو جنرال urban، اوكي، دي في اي وسط مدينه، بس ايه هنا ميد رايز وهاي رايز buildings and so on. This approach is much easier, okay, to work with. Here, for example, for institutional, elementary school, okay, there's a number of trip generation. Private schools, okay, and it's based on students, okay. Some of you might wonder, okay, why, Dr. Weil, for private school K to 12 we have 0.17, okay. Can someone answer this question? Why we don't calculate it based on the number of students, for example? شباب.
Doctor, excuse me, sorry for interrupting, but can you tell me, please, what are these stats standing for? Because there was something prevented me from being with you. So may you give me something to let me catch up with you?
Okay, what do you need to know exactly? Can you be more specific?
I want to know what are we talking about now? What are these stats stand for?
These tables standing for.
Yeah.
You have seen this. That's the title. Institute of Transportation Engineers, okay, common trip generation rates. That's the rates of trip generation based on land use, okay?
Uh-huh.
And that's for the PM peak hour. Okay, we are now on the same page.
ساعة الذروة.
بالظبط ساعة الذروة المسائية. تمام. These are the number of trips generated, okay, based on land use. واضح؟
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. طيب. I'm glad that you stopped me, you know, don't keep me going, okay, without, you know, and you are not following. For example, here for university, college, okay, we have 1.17 per 1,000 square foot. Per 1,000 square foot, we have this number. But can someone explain to me why in private school, for example, you know, for each student we have
الصوت يقطع يا دكتور.
ازاي بيقطع؟
يعني يروح يجي الصوت.
Okay. Is this common for everybody or just for you? Hello?
Bad connection, Doctor. Bad connection. You have bad connection.
No, I don't have a bad connection. I have a fiber optic connection straight to my computer.
I don't know what's the problem, but that seems like a bad connection.
Maybe
The problem
you know,
seems
okay,
like a bad
okay.
connection.
Guys, for all of you, can you hear me clearly or the sound goes, you know, on and off?
On and off, doctor. It sometimes it cut it
Yeah,
off.
it goes on and off, doctor.
Okay. Okay, let me repeat again. For a private school, we have, for each student, there is expected number of trips 0.17. Does this make sense?
Maybe there is some students, they came together in a bus or something like that. So
Exactly, because most schools, they have, you know, they have school bus service. Okay, so that's why you see this number 0.17. So for, you know, a group of students, they get into a bus. That's why you have these, you know, you know, per students it's 0.17, because of course there are the teachers, there are the other employees in the school. Okay, so if you calculate it all together, the average will be 0.17. And in high school, you know, here they have for a church per square foot, okay, there is 0.49 trips. Okay, this is for a synagogue. Okay, it's 2.92, and there is a mosque, it's 4.22 trips. That's good. Can you see the difference here? Why we have this difference? You can look at it here that in for church, people go primarily on Sundays. Okay, and then they
Yeah,
can pray
that's
at
what I
home.
mean.
For synagogues, okay, they have prayers, I think, 3 times a day. Okay, for mosques, we have, you know, prayers 5 days, 5 times a
5
day.
times a day, all
That's
days of the
why
week.
we have more frequent prayers in the day. That's why, you know, there is more, the attraction of trips is higher for mosque. Okay, مفهوم يا شباب? Here, for example, for daycare center.
Yeah, yeah.
Daycare center, for each 1,000 square foot, there is 11.12. Okay, so those, they
Okay.
don't have buses. That's why the trip rates is very high.
There,
You see the point?
because the parents drop their children at the
Yes, and they
daycare
go to
center.
pick them up. That's why,
Yeah,
you know, for example, for cemetery, maqbara, okay, per acre, here per acre, not per square foot. Okay, في الهكتار 0.46 trips, because, you know, the number of visitors to cemeteries is not that frequent. You get the point? So the bottom line, we want to conclude this this part. Okay, these tables are very useful. Okay, for trip generation purpose. It's much convenient. Okay, and it's easier to deal with. Okay, then after finishing the calculation of the trips, we go and do some what we call trip balancing for the trip generation. Okay, why? Because again, the production, these are the trip produced, but the attraction, as I mentioned before, this is a trip opportunity. Okay, attraction, it's a trip opportunity. What does it mean? Yani, for example, if we have, for example, the Zahran Mall. Okay, it has an attraction for X number of customers. Okay, or X number of trips. If another mall opens, okay, in the Zahran area, do you expect the same number of people will go to Zahran Mall?
No, Doctor.
What's going to happen is going to drop, but the attraction will still the same. The attraction is going to be the same. It's not going to drop, right? So the attraction is basically a trip opportunity, but not necessarily will occur. That means, for example, here zone, we have 800 attractions and we have 600 generations. Okay, that means the attractions are more than the production. So in this case, and for our purpose of analysis, we need to have both values equal. So what do? We multiply these numbers with 600 over 800. And this is for all of these values. So we end up with prorated value here. Okay, so this 400 becomes 300. We need to have the attraction and the production equal, as we can see here. That's the total attraction and total production. In order for our analysis to be smooth and without problems. Correct? Okay. I think this is a repetition. Balancing home-based trips, okay, and for balancing a non-home-based trips, okay, the same also applies here. Then after that, we go to the trip distribution. What is trip distribution? Okay, trip distribution is basically this part that we have these productions, okay, and we want to distribute to know how many of those will go here, how many of those produced will go here. Those are attractions, okay, and how many will go, how the distribution of these trips, of this production. So the basic model for we shall use for this is called gravity model. Gravity model it mimics the gravitational attraction concept.
واضح دكتور.
شكرا دكتور يعطيك العافيه.
واضح
Thank
دكتور
you,
يعطيك
Dr.
العافيه.
Okay then, we see you tomorrow inshallah.
ان شاء
Thank you,
الله.
Doctor.
يعطيك العافية.